this video, we're going to go over how to dimension one of your views. Now, dimensioning is a complicated and time-consuming thing, and you can go about it several different ways. In this video, we're going to be focusing on dimensioning based on the geometry in your drawing view, so those drawing curves, and ways that you can get dimensions on there without having to cherry-pick drawing curves in more complicated ways. So some of those ways is when you have a drawing view, you have a whole lot of curves, and you can, a lot of times you want to dimension, for example, here you want to dimension the top or the left of the whole thing. And you can do that by grabbing the topmost line here or the most left line, or, doing it in different ways where here we have two circles and I want to dimension both. Now I know I only have two circles and there's no other circular curves, so I can grab all the circular curves and dimension them as well. So we're using what we know about our set of drawing curves to pick out specific dimensions. So let's look at what that code looks like. If I open up here, this LSTAND part sheet, we're going to start here, and you'll notice submain. What does that tell us? That tells us that we have functions probably down below. So I'll go ahead and once again, just kind of give an overview of what these functions are doing, but not dive into the specifics. So here, we actually have not a function. Well, we do have a function. It's passing back a drawing curve orientation enum. So this is just setting up the different orientations of the curves. So we pass in a drawing curve, and it's going to pass out whether it's going to be angled or angled, vertical, or horizontal, or it's not a line. Say we get an arc, okay? And we do that by setting up a drawing enum. So the enums here, I'll open that back up again, that you saw there, this drawing curve orientation enum .dc angled. This is not an enum that Inventor gives us. This is one we defined ourselves. So this is something you can do in your iLogic rules is set up enums. So here we set up that where we have, hey, not a line, undefined, vertical, horizontal, and angled. Okay, so that's one of the methods that we're doing. Then that just helps us kind of parse through the drawing curves and filter out so we can be a little more performative. Makes it faster if we don't have to go through all the curves. We can just be like, give me all the horizontal ones. Now, these other methods here are methods to get the topmost curve or the bottommost curve or the rightmost curve. So they're just looping through all the curves and then checking their extents and seeing which one's more to the right than the others. Now, I made it so that you can pass in that orientation enum to say, hey, I only want the horizontal curves, or I only want the vertical curves to do that. Thus being able to, filter out to the curves that we want. And then the final function here is getting all circular curves. So this one, we just pass in the drawing curves enumerator. This one's real simple. And we for each through it, and we ask, hey, are you now this is an Inventor enum, curve type enum dot circular curve. And if it's a circular curve, we add it to the list and pop it out. So we only get the circular curves. So those are the methods that we kind of have lingering down here that we'll use.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see you all joining. Quick interruption before we move on. If you're finding this useful, your engagement, liking, subscribing, following, that's what enables us to keep creating and sharing this level of content. Now let's get back into it.
So now if we pop up back to the top, we can look at how we're going to go about this. So we're going to get our drawing document and our transient geometry. We're going to get a sheet format. We're adding a sheet here. I'm just going to skip kind of this as it's not on dimensions, it's on adding a sheet. So we'll name it and whatnot. We also need to get our document if we're going to add a view of it. So we'll go ahead and get that. We'll add views. Okay, now we get down to the dimensions. So we're going to add a general dimension variable here by sheet, drawing dimensions, general dimensions. Now we're going to focus on dimensioning the front view here. So we'll grab the rightmost curve. We're going to pass in, we're going to get that method that we talked about, get rightmost curve, pass in all the curves from the front view. And in this case, we just want the vertical ones because if we remember, go ahead, oops, hit save and run. If we remember, we're getting the rightmost curve. We know it's vertical. We know what we're dealing with. And we don't want to have like, oh, this point is just as right as that point. So it's going to maybe think that one is. So we're just going to filter for those vertical curves. So that'll give us our rightmost curve. And we do the same with the leftmost and the same with the topmost, except we're passing in horizontal for top and bottom. So those will get us the curves there. Now, once we get the curves, what do we do with them? Well, when we want to add a dimension to something, we can't just put it on a curve. We have to make a special type of object called a geometry intent. So geometry intent is kind of like how the Inventor drawing allows you to attach things like leader points or dimensions to things or balloons. So here we have our sheet, create geometry intent, and we just pass in that leftmost curve. Now, let's say if we wanted to cherry pick a point, like the start point or end point of that, you can actually pass in a PointIntentEnum here. And that would look like this. If we come in here and say K PointIntentEnum, and then add in that in that way. And that way you can get the actual midpoint, you can get the start point or the end point. So that's very helpful if you're trying to dimension to a point and not just a line. In this case, we just want to dimension the line. So here we have our leftmost curve, our rightmost curve. We're going to get the geometry intents there. So next we have our top placement points. So this is just where we're going to place the text of the dimension. So we need to make a point. We're going to grab the leftmost curve and the rightmost curve and grab their midpoints and divide them in two because we want it in between the two. And then we'll get the topmost curve midpoint and just pop it above it. So that'll put it above in the middle there. And then we'll actually call the call that adds the dimension. So general dimensions that we set up here, add linear, it's a linear dimension. We're going to add top placement point and then geo intent line. So that's that geometry intent we created for the leftmost, geometry intent we created for the rightmost, and that will give us our linear dimension for the top. And then we just repeat that for the left side as well. Okay, so we got the leftmost and the rightmost and the topmost lines, and we dimensioned off of those. What about those circles? So we can get all circle curves here from that method that we looked at. So we passed in the drawing curves from the view. We got all the circular curves. Now, we know that there are two here, but let's say you could have a variable amount. You had a pattern or something, and you could for loop through this. Since I know there are two, I'm just calling out the list here. Notice this is a list. It's not an Inventor object collection. So the first item is a 0. The second item is a 1. So I'll grab each of those, pass them into the geometry intent, create the two geometry intents for circle 1, circle 2. And then I'm going to add a diameter dimension. So we'll say general dimensions, add diameter, pass in the point of where we want to place this. And I'm just doing it off the center point and adding 2 to the right and 1 up, and then passing in the geometry intent of the circle curve. I do that for both of them. And then we do the same type of thing for the left view. It doesn't have circles, so we're just doing the extents of it. So now if I run this and I look at it, here you'll notice it adds here, I'll go ahead and delete these so you can see it's doing it automatically here. Delete those, and then we run it over here, pop. We'll see that we add the top here, the left, there's those 2 circles, and then we only had 1 dimension to add on this view here. And that is one way that you can add dimensions to your views.
Hi everyone, a quick pause before we go on. The partner you choose for your Autodesk environment matters more than most teams realize. You're already engaged with our content, but you may want to learn more about our ability to help you with support across engineering, data, sales, and simulation. Please go to ketiv.com/Autodesk to learn more.